Welcome to the Purpose and Possibility podcast. This is your host, Laura Murphy, founder of Soul Body. Join me for inspiring conversations with people who are living on purpose, living into their purpose, and who just might open you up to new and bigger possibility. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Thank you for being on this journey with me through the Purpose and Possibility podcast. I sat down and did some planning for the podcast and got some exciting things coming, both with guests and solo episodes like this one. So today's episode will be just me riffing on a topic that has been sitting in my heart that I feel really called to share and to just talk a little bit more in depth about. And I really appreciate the feedback that you guys have been sending to me, just on the guests that we've had so far and just, the topics that we've explored. And we are just scratching the surface. So before we begin today's episode, I just want to acknowledge that the work I do through Soul Body and through this podcast takes place on the unceded territory of the Coastal Salish people, including the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And I highly, highly encourage you to take a moment to reflect on and do some research on the land that you occupy. So let's jump into today's episode. Before we do that, let's take a breath. I'm feeling really in my head, so let's just take a breath together. So if you are not driving or doing anything that requires your full attention, you can close your eyes and place your hand over your heart and take a deep breath in through your nose and let it out through your mouth. And we're going to do that one more time. And on your next exhale, I want you to see if you can put something down, something that you're carrying. Breathing in. And I ask you to notice any subtle shifts in just the simple act of taking a conscious and connected breath, connected to your heart, connected to the moment, in taking just a breath and seeing what it does, whether that's in your body, whether that's in your mind, whether that's somewhere in between. And I want you to know you have access to that all the time. That is a practice that I do often. And I'm going to get more into these kind of practices and just, what's possible when you lean into your breath just a little bit more. But I wanted today's podcast to come from my heart. And the quickest way for me to get into my heart is eyes closed, hand over heart, and taking a breath. That is me connecting. It's putting aside everything else. So I encourage you to, if it feels good, invite that into your practice and know that even just one breath, that is meditation. I will leave that there. So I wanted to start today's episode with something that I'm celebrating, and I think it's important. And this has been a reframe that I have been working through. I resist a gratitude practice because I find it always turns to I'm grateful for my dog, I'm grateful for my job, I'm grateful for my friends, those sort of things. And I wanted to get a bit meatier than that. So I like to ask the question of what am I celebrating today? And today and it doesn't have to be something big, but this one is big, I think. I am celebrating the fact that I get to go home for the first time in 2 years and see and embrace and be with my family. I moved here about 9 years ago, but Newfoundland will and always has been my home. In my heart, in my soul, it is my home. And the fact that I haven't been able to go there has been really challenging because of the world that we live in today. But they are loosening restrictions and I will get to go home this summer and I cannot wait. So I'm definitely celebrating that. So I encourage you to ask yourself, what are you celebrating today? And it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be extravagant. It could be something so simple as what, I made it through today. That is what I'm celebrating. And give yourself some grace. So today I wanted to dive into a topic, speaking of mindfulness and self-inquiry. This is exactly what we're talking about today. I wanted to talk about what it is to be the curious explorer of your life and where that term came from and why it resonates so much with me and what it's opened up for me since I have started to operate from this place of curiosity And I want to say it's more than just curiosity. It's curiosity and accountability or ownership of my life. So I first heard the term become the curious explorer of your life when I was doing my meditation teacher training a good few years ago. That was the invitation when we started, was to use that practice of mindfulness and meditation to just get curious about your emotions, get curious about your reactions. And it was an invitation to turn the focus, one, into the moment, and two, inward. So, and you can see how this really intricately intertwines with the idea of mindfulness. So, mindfulness is definitely having a hot moment in the wellness world, and you may hear the term a lot. And if you don't know what that means, this is the lens that I look through mindfulness is it's present moment awareness without judgment. So you are not in your past, you are not in your future, you are seeing what is in front of you through the eyes of today, through the eyes of right now. And you are doing that without judgment, without reaction. I like to call it the space between. It's the space between, and this is what I teach in my breath work and through the breath, and what the breath is able to create is the space between. And it's the space between what is happening in front of your eyes and how you're internalizing it and how you're reacting to it. That is the space in between, because somewhere in there of like the reflection of what's happening in the world and how you respond is the truth. And also in that space is your truth. So it helps you see things a bit more objectively, but it also helps you respond from your heart versus your head. And you hear me say this a lot. And I actually had one of the clients that I teach in the business program that I'm a part of, she called me a heart activator. And I resonated so deeply with that, because if there's something that I teach in almost every call, every post, everything that I do is to come into your heart, because there's a different truth than what sits in your head. And that is what mindfulness creates. It's the present moment awareness. And I think with a misconception in mindfulness is that it creates silence. Or it quiets the mind of the busy chatter that goes on all the time. And what it actually does, it helps you become a witness to it and get curious about it versus letting it rule your life. It will never go away. Asking your mind to stop thinking is like asking your heart to stop beating, and you don't want to do that. But when you become the curious explorer of it, you get to see different sides of it. You get to experience it in a different way, and you then get to choose to react in a different way. So that is the lens of curiosity and mindfulness. So in that practice, when we started, she invited us to become the curious explorer of our life, which meant exploring our emotions and not shying away from the more difficult emotions, but getting curious about them, getting curious about what they do to your body and how your body reacts to them and what situations they react to them. And, getting curious about the life situations and the patterns that show up, and all sorts of different things. And I have taken that concept with me in my journey through personal development and my exploration of spirituality. And if there's anything that I teach, almost as much as coming into your heart, is to get curious. Get curious about who you are, why you are the way you are, why you believe the things you believe. Get curious about what's possible for you and what's true for you. So that is the invitation in today's episode. And I just wanted to talk about what that has done for me in my life. And my hope is that you walk away from this in just getting a little more curious and taking a little more ownership of your life so that you can create the life that is meaningful and is worth living. And that's what this is all about, in my opinion. So what are some of the key moments in my journey of getting curious about my life and about myself? I think one of the biggest shifts, there's been a couple of really big shifts. One of the biggest shifts in my life has been turning the focus inward versus outward, which is annoying. And I think I may have brought up on a podcast earlier that I had a teacher recently kind of reiterate this, but looking at it through a different lens. And she said to me, or to us, one of the key things that she taught was our external world is a reflection of our internal world. And it annoyed me. It like annoyed the shit out of me when she said that. I was just like, no way. There is no way that this thing that I'm unhappy with in my life has anything to do with me. This is something that is happening to me, and it is my job then to react, to get through it, to problem solve, and to control, which I'm really, recovering from. So what getting curious about it is like, we can only control, and I say this in my coaching calls, of you can only control to the end of your own fingertips. And if there's something that's going on in your life, turn the focus inward. And two of the biggest examples of this in me seeking something outside of myself, that the long lesson was that I had to learn it on the inside. One was me moving to Vancouver. While it was one of the best decisions of my absolute life, the intentions on why I moved in the first place were to seek something outside of myself. One, I was running from my feelings. I was running from a difficult situation. And honestly, I think it's a decision that I had to make in the moment. And I don't think it could have gone any other way. But the result that I was seeking in running away to Vancouver, the result that I was seeking, I only found when I started doing the internal work and asking some of the hard questions of myself. And the other time that happened in my life, which you've heard me talk about when I talked about my journey through purpose, is when I quit my job and I went traveling the world, and I was like looking for my purpose. I looked on the beaches of India, of Southeast Asia, of New Zealand. And for 6 months, I thought I was going to come to this, like, come to Jesus moment of like, aha, I got it. This is my purpose. And that is it. And when I came back, while the trip, I would say, was a success because it was like the best experience of my life, what I was seeking only started to unfold when I turned the focus inward and started doing and I hate even using this word, but quote unquote, the work. And if you want to know, when people refer to like, oh, I'm really doing the work, and you hear this a lot on the West Coast, people doing the work. What is the work? The work is getting curious and taking ownership of your life. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So what I'm inviting you into is actually like the work. And what is the result of the work is like that which you are seeking. So, and I think that ties back to like external world is a reflection of your internal world, because when you do the work on the inside, your external world starts looking more like you want it to look. That is a mouthful. So when I started getting curious about what I was like actually seeking, and the beliefs that I have and why I was even seeking the things I was seeking, I was able to come to more truth and more in line with my own heart and what I wanted. One of the other biggest shifts, and I'll get more into that in a moment, and I just wanted to talk about the key moments. And one of the other big shifts that I've had in my life in getting curious about my life is shifting the perspective from being a victim to taking ownership of my role in the things that happen in my life. And that is also a part of, external world versus internal world. And I use I have a couple of different like scenarios in which like this has happened. So I use like the lens of my divorce. I went through a really traumatic breakup. It was probably one of the most traumatic moments, or periods in my life. And it would have been very easy for me to stay in the mode of being a victim for the rest of my life. It would have been really easy. However, I see now it would have been probably the most miserable life I could live. But I see how people can stay comfortable there. They can stay comfortable in being a victim. Like, this happened to me. This person did me wrong. I had nothing to do with it. It blindsided me. This stuff happens to me. And like, that's the story that you tell yourself. And it is exactly that. Yes, I had no control over the reactions and the actions that he had. But when I turned the gaze back to myself and started doing the work through therapy and through breath work and through just getting curious, I'm like, I wonder why this happened. And I wonder what role that I played. And not in like him having the reactions and actions that he did, but when I stopped playing the role of the victim, I was able to see the role that I played, which was like really fucking hard. It's really fucking hard to own your shit. But I was also able to heal on a whole new level. And I was able to see the moments that I ignored my intuition. I was able to see the moments where I talked myself out of red flags, that it wasn't that bad or things would change, or I was able to see where I wasn't honoring my own boundaries and my own wishes and desires. And I was able to see where I was losing myself. And it was only when I was able to like, okay, yes, these things happened to me, but what role did I play? And just start getting curious about that. Another situation is like, I've been let go from a couple of jobs here in Vancouver. And I, in talking my way around that, when I go to job interviews, it's like I work for startup companies. But one job in particular I got let go of and let go from, and I was like very, very surprised at this one. If I look back at, the process I was in to get that job, there was red flags all over the place that I was ignoring, and I talked myself into wanting something because it would provide me a salary, but it like didn't check any other box that I wanted. Yes, it was in marketing. Yes, it provided me the salary that I was seeking. But none of the other boxes did it fit, and I ignored that. So I ignored my intuition, and it ended up being like I got let go. And I had my moment, and I encourage you all to have your moments of allowing yourself to feel the woe is me, like, fuck, this happened to me, what is wrong with me, what is wrong with the world, I had nothing to do with this. But then get curious. Yeah. How does that feel? I know some people can get really defensive, or it is hard. It is hard to look at your own role in the world that you have created. But what it has also been able to show me is that I need to take accountability for the life that I want to live and what a meaningful life is to me. And if you are wondering on where to start with like this quote unquote work, or, I don't even know what to get curious about, start getting curious about why you want the things you want. And I think Tess was like a perfect example of this when she said in her episode, and this is one of my favorite things that she said, is she redefined success and what success meant to her. And she talked about, success to her was being able to pick her children up every single day at 3:00 outside the schoolyard. And that was the epitome of success for her. That was making it. And that is a far cry from what we've been taught success looks like. We've been taught, like people growing up in my era, we've been taught success looked like a corner office, and success looked like you were a VP or a director or like whatever and making a certain salary. But, question why you want that. That's like the first place to start if you want to start getting curious about your life and crafting the life that you really want. What's important to you? And, why do you believe the things that you believe? I heard someone say once that a belief is only a belief as long as you believe it. And we do belief work in some of the work that I do in that. And, the work that I did with Susie Batiste, she talks about like, we all have an internal operating system, and you would never buy like a new MacBook and never like update the software. And belief work is just that. It's like updating the software. We are imprinted and conditioned from the moment we are, some people say conceived, but like definitely in utero. And we are influenced by, the media, by our parents, by our surroundings, by where we went to school, by where we grew up. We were influenced by all of that. And, we're taught to mimic that. And it's only as adults can we discern, does this still fit for me? Does this still work for me? I'm reading a book on this now, and like they talked about like, as an adult, most of the decisions that we make, even down to like the toothpaste that we use, is an influence of how we grew up. And just like start asking yourself, like, and like, yes, beyond toothpaste, but like, why do I believe that? And one of the most poignant questions, and this comes from The Work by Byron Katie, is when you have a belief about yourself. So, say you want something in your life, and think about the thought that comes up that tells you you can't do it. So, maybe you're not whatever enough. One of the most poignant questions you can ask yourself is that true? And I believe when we start getting curious and questioning these beliefs, the like thinking part of our mind that wants to keep us safe and talks us out of doing anything that's like unfamiliar, it's like the story starts to dissolve a little bit. And I see this a lot in entrepreneurship and like helping people start their dream businesses is in what I do with Chakra Girl Business School and through some of my own one-on-one coaching. Fear is like the biggest thing that holds us back from anything. And I get them to explore that, like call that fear into the light. Like what are you afraid of? And some people are like, oh, I'm afraid to put myself out there, or I'm afraid of failure. And I just ask them to just keep asking questions. And this whole process of becoming a curious explorer of your life is just keep asking questions like, and like that's the response you want to elicit is like, I wonder why I'm so afraid. And then you'll get a little bit deeper and you'll like get to an answer of like, well, I'm afraid because if I do this and if I quit my job and like blah blah blah, but what I'm really afraid of is like being shunned from the herd. You know what I mean? Like we are a community-based society, being shunned by the people that we love, or being outcast from society, or being seen in a certain way. You'll get to one of the core like underlying fears if you just keep asking questions, and the stories and the beliefs that we have that we tell ourselves will start to dissolve the more we start questioning it. Like, is it true? And where did that come from? And what do I really want to be true? And on the flip side of that, rather than just like always looking back at like, why am I the way I am? Where did this come from? Something that I encourage a lot in breath work is to ask yourself questions like, what's possible? What's possible for me beyond this? If I wasn't afraid, what would be possible? What would I do differently? And it can just open you up to the idea of something new. And what all of this journey of getting curious, what it has taught me and what has allowed me to learn is to really determine what feels good and what doesn't, what is in alignment with my beliefs and who I am, and what is out. And like even in the situation of like like a divorce or like things that are misalignment or whatever, is like what is in integrity for me and what is out of integrity for me. And that allows you to know who you are more at a core level, so you can make decisions and start creating the life that you want from like, okay, that was out of integrity. Moving forward, I'm going to try my hardest to stay in making decisions that feel integral to who I am. And that's where you start taking accountability for like what is showing up in your life and taking responsibility. And you can truly see that you are the creator of what you truly can be the creator of the life that you want. And I sometimes use the word co-creator because I really think that the universe, whatever you want that to look like and be, will show you. So if you're curious on curious on where to start getting curious in your life, start asking yourself those questions. Number 2, if you're curious on where to start, look at what the universe is serving up for you. What are the patterns that keep happening in your life? So for me, I got let go from 3 jobs. That is a pattern. So I started getting curious, like, okay, I'm the common denominator here. It's not that I am incompetent. It is not that I can't do the work. But I started getting curious. I'm like, what was I seeking from these jobs? Why didn't it work out? And beyond the like, oh, they ran out of money and they had to let go of 50% of their staff and things like that. But like, what drew me to that in the first place? And it allowed me to see that I was like perpetuating different relationship styles and just different like dependency styles and what I was seeking from those relationships and things like that. And it just like life will show you, and I certainly believe that life or the universe will show you, and it begins in a whisper. And when you don't create the space like we do with the breath in the beginning, or, getting really in tune with what is in integrity or alignment and what is out, so it'll show you in a whisper. And if you don't listen to or hear the whisper, the universe will yell. And if you sometimes I am a stubborn as I'm a stubborn Leo. Sometimes I don't like to hear that either. The universe will hit you eventually with a 2x4. So one of these like life altering moments, and it doesn't have to be like a life or death moment, but like one of these bigger moments in your life that will stop you in your tracks. For me, it was the traumatic breakup. It stopped me in my tracks. Like, you are out of integrity with your beliefs. You are out of integrity with, your boundaries, with your intuition. We are going to throw this wrench, so you have to deal with it. You can't hide from it anymore. So the universe will show you the patterns and show you where to start looking. I would encourage you to start getting curious before you get to that point, because those points are definitely more painful. So to wrap up, and you know how I love to get tangibles and takeaways, what is this all about? My invitation to you is to start getting curious about what's under the hood of your life. If something in your life doesn't look the way you want it to look, doesn't feel the way you want it to feel, get curious. Or if you have big ambitions and dreams, get curious, because what got you to this point won't get you to where you want to go. It's going to take doing some inner work and some outer work, but mostly inner work. And honestly, what I've seen with like people building successful businesses, it is not the nuts and bolts of building a business. It is the inner work that gets them there. It's moving through the beliefs that they have. It's moving through the the patterns that they go through and stumbling themselves so that they can step out of the way and actually do the external work that needs to happen to build the business that they want. That is what I have seen time and time and time again. And it doesn't just refer to like in your business. It's like creating the life that you want. If you want to create the life that you truly, truly desire, start getting curious about who you are, what got you to here, the things that you believe, what's possible for you, what's true for you. So, tangibles. What are some things that you can do to start doing that today? Get curious. Take a zoomed out look at your life. What are the things that are showing up in patterns? What are the things that have shown up like, I keep dating the same person? I wonder why that is. What am I seeking from these people? What does this relationship remind me of? Just start asking questions. I'm going to tell you like a bit of an off tangent, and I'll come back to the tangibles. And it actually kind of leads into the second takeaway is I find, I'll tie it all together. Roundabout way of saying this, I'll tie it all together. Another tangible is journaling. And again, how I do that, even if it's not journaling or through a practice like breath work, I ask myself questions and then I answer. I'm like, I wonder why I keep doing this. I wonder why I keep feeling the way I'm feeling. What does this remind me of? What other time in my life might this remind me of? Or sometimes it's as simple as asking a question of, what does my heart have to tell me? If my heart was to speak to me now, what would it say? What is the lesson? What is the blessing? Like, look back at those pivotal moments in your life. And like, yes, when you are in it, it is hard to see like there is a lesson or blessing in here somewhere. But when you've removed yourself, so I can look back at like some key moments over my last decade or even lifetime and just say like, in the time that those were painful, yes. But now that I'm removed from them, what were the lessons and blessings? I don't think I would be the person I am today if that big breakup didn't happen. Like, I think that was like one of those moments in time that literally shifted the course of my life to where I am now. And for that, I'm like incredibly grateful. So just like looking at those like key moments in your life and just asking the question, like, what is the lesson? Because there's always something to learn. What can I excavate from this? And know that when we start getting curious about these things, these are just accelerating our own expansion. And sometimes we limit what we think is possible for us. Because we look at it through the eyes of who we are today and who we were in the past, essentially, like we limit what is actually possible for us. So if you were to remove, and like, this is a question you can ask yourself and get curious about, is if I were to remove having to figure out the how. And if I were to remove all the experiences that I've had until this moment, what's possible for me? You know, if I wasn't afraid, and that's another question I love to ask, if I wasn't afraid, what would I do differently? How would I show up differently? What would I do? So ask yourself what's possible. So I want to come back to a story of journaling. So my current boyfriend has a son who used to see me journaling all the time, and he got so curious and like asking me. He asked me like, "How do you do it? How do you journal?" And I just told him like, ask yourself questions, and this is a part of getting curious. And I think like at a younger age, like he was 18 when he came to me and asked me that question. Honestly, best day of my goddamn life. I felt like I had made it as like a girlfriend to someone with parents when he's just like, how do you journal and how do you get into personal development? Best day ever. And I told him, I was like, just ask yourself questions and then write the answers. And just like write whatever comes up. There's no right or wrong. Just write the answers. And you will find out more about yourself. You will come to solutions that you never knew possible. You will have aha moments. And that all is the invitation to be the curious explorer of your life. Our life is meant to be a really rich experience. Get curious about it and explore it, and not through the lens of shaming yourself, not through the lens of beating yourself up over anything that's happened in the past. I had a mentor that would once say there is zero intrinsic value on beating yourself up over anything that's happened in the past. It just is. It is. Like, you can't change anything that had happened in the past. The lesson may be, all right, this happened. I might have dealt with it a little bit differently. I know better moving forward. That is the lesson. But there's no value in beating yourself up over anything that's happened in the past. Get curious. So I will end there. I know I'm like all over the place here, but my hope in this is that you get curious enough about your life that you start creating the life that you want. That is what my true intention in this podcast. Get curious about your life so you can start creating the life that you want. Get curious about who you are, what you want, what you believe, why you are the way you are, what's possible, and know that you have full ownership over how you show up in this world. You have full ownership. I will close there. Why don't we close by taking a breath, because I feel all riled up and I could keep talking. So let's take another breath together. Let's shake it out. And again, putting something down on the exhale, breathing in and out. I wanted to thank you again for coming on this journey with me. I hope you enjoy these little riffs as much as I do. I have a lot more planned, but I would love your feedback. It's so important to me. I would also love if you could like and comment and review this podcast so that it reaches a broader audience, if you feel so inclined. And until next time, take care. From my heart to yours, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you like what you heard and the message resonated with you, please subscribe, leave a review, give us a 5-star rating. And if you think someone else needs this message, please forward it to them. For daily updates and inspo, you can follow us on Instagram at soulbody.co. Until then, I'll catch you next week.